All right, let's dive right in. I want to take you on a little tour of something pretty special, a privately circulated magazine from 1920s Los Angeles called The All-Seeing Eye. Now you have to picture this scene. This was a city just booming with new money and new ideas. And this magazine? Well, it wasn't for everybody. The very first page makes that crystal clear, addressing its readers simply as, "Dear friend and truth seeker."
And boom, right there on the cover, you get the mission statement. I mean, that's a pretty bold promise, isn't it? The entire publication is built around this one single idea, that all this ancient, timeless wisdom, it holds the keys to solving the challenges of modern life, even the modern life of the Roaring '20s.
But here's where it gets really interesting, the way it was distributed. This was a completely non-commercial project. The editor says it plain as day. The magazine cannot be bought and has no fixed value. So what does that mean? It means subscribers had to decide for themselves what it was worth and send that in. The editor called it a realization of responsibility, basically turning the readers into patrons of this shared community. So you open up this old-school occult magazine, and what do you think you're going to find, right? Dense mystical texts, maybe some ancient rituals. Well, the very first article is a total curveball. It's a passionate argument for the spiritual necessity of nonsense.
The article basically lays out these two characters for us. On one side, you've got the gloom dispenser, the kind of person who just radiates pessimism and sucks the joy out of a room. And on the other side, the laughing mystic who spreads cheer. The magazine is really pushing back against this idea that a long face equals holiness, calling it an entirely erroneous concept, because according to them, true spiritual balance has to include a good laugh.
And this quote just nails the whole point. Humor isn't seen as something trivial. It's a divine faculty. The ability to just appreciate the ridiculousness of things, to joke around and laugh, that's presented as a sign of true superphysical greatness. In their view, a healthy soul doesn't just put up with the world. It knows how to smile at it.
Okay, but it wasn't all just, philosophical essays. The magazine got creative. It had this whole section called occult fiction, and this first story is a classic detective yarn, but with a mystical twist. So the plot? It's simple, but it works. A professor's found murdered. The house detective is completely clueless. And then out of nowhere, this mysterious Chinese mystic shows up. He doesn't dust for prints or look for physical clues. Nope, he uses his third eye to just see the truth of what really happened and solves the case instantly. So what even is this third eye? Well, the story literally pauses to explain it for us, weaving the magazine's whole philosophy right into the plot. It says it's the pineal gland, an organ that, when you awaken it, becomes a tool of perception that's way beyond our normal five senses. And just like that, a simple detective story becomes a lesson. So we've had humor, we've had a murder mystery, now we get to the main event. The centerpiece of the whole issue is this huge, sweeping epic about the lost continent of Atlantis. But here's the thing. It's not presented as a myth. It's presented as a factual, absolutely crucial chapter in the history of the human soul. And man, the picture it paints is just incredible. It talks about wondrous cities with twisting spiral minarets, universities paved in marble, a civilization of demigods. It was a world, as the magazine puts it, that was wild, massive, and grand, a time when humanity was at its absolute peak, physically and intellectually. But see, this isn't just about admiring a cool lost city. This is a cautionary tale. The article claims that this incredible civilization collapsed for three very specific moral reasons. First, the price of blood. They lived by violence. Second, the loss of beauty. Not looks, but the inner beauty of compassion and soul. And third, the perversion of education. They just stopped trying to find inner wisdom and failed to learn from their mistakes. So, after all that, the humor, the fiction, the epic history of a fallen civilization, the magazine brings it all back home. It connects these huge ideas to something deeply personal and practical. How you can avoid making the same mistakes by focusing on creating yourself. In a section about Masonic symbols, we get this really beautiful, powerful metaphor, the robe of blue and gold. It's described as a kind of spiritual garment, this radiant body of light that every single person has to weave for themselves. And it's not made of cloth. It's woven from your own best thoughts, your highest ideals, and your acts of service to others.
And it's not just some abstract idea. They actually give you the instructions. It says we all start with this triple thread: our thoughts, our actions, and our desires. The whole point is to purify those three things and then weave them together into a seamless life. That purified life itself becomes the loom, where you can build that radiant spiritual robe of glory.
And that's where it all clicks into place. The humor, the detective story, the fall of Atlantis, they're not just random articles. They are all pointing to the exact same idea. This magazine wasn't about hoarding obscure facts. It was offering a toolkit. It was making the case that all this ancient wisdom from all over the world is meant to be used to actively build a better, more harmonious, and more enlightened version of yourself.
Which really leaves us with a final thought, one that feels just as urgent today as it must have in the 1920s. I mean, we live in an age of infinite data, endless distractions. So the question this nearly 100-year-old magazine is asking us is this: is the focused search for timeless, practical wisdom, is that not just an interesting hobby, but maybe more essential now than ever before?